Hello. Thank you for joining Helaman's Army today. I just had a thought that I would just make a random video just discussing random things. And I know that, like, I don't know, 80% of you are going to swipe away in the next 2.5 minutes. So, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about. And if you want to stick around for it, that's great. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to talk about the book, The Power of Truth. I'm going to talk about the next book that I might do, maybe, called The Fundamentals of Prosperity by Roger Babson. I'm going to talk about why, I've talked about this before, but I'm going to say again, why I focus on the older General Conference talks, and there's a reason for that. And then I'm going to talk about the new General Conference talks. And then I'm going to discuss the massive amount of media that's produced by the church for us to consume. Also, there's an experimental live stream coming up on July 24th. And then I'm going to mention, hopefully briefly, but who knows how excited I get about temple theology. And then I have one final message about praying and prayer. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to talk about. If you're not interested, you can swipe away now. I know some of you are going to do that anyway. So maybe we'll just cut that number down right off the bat. So, just a couple things I had on my mind. Number one, I finished recording The Power of Truth, and I've uploaded it all to YouTube. You should be able to listen to it. I think it's a wonderful book. I really enjoyed that book. It's been probably one of my favorite books. I stumbled across that book when I first started reading general conferences from the early 1900s. That book gets quoted a lot. Matter of fact, I think I even found a quote from William George Jordan in the general conferences in the 1970s. So he gets quoted for decades and decades. And so I thought, if I'm going to try to be a good person and a good man and to be like the prophets who are trying to be like Jesus, if I can try to match some of their characteristics, I want to study what they're studying so I can understand what they're thinking. And so that book was like literally just one that I found because I was looking for what they were studying. And it's been a really good book. I've really enjoyed it. It really opened my eyes to what truth is and how we go after it, how we look for it. So the next book, I've gotten some pretty good responses on The Power of Truth, and so I think I'll do another one. The next book will be The Fundamentals of Prosperity by Roger Babson. It was published at the turn of the century. When I say that, I mean the last century, 1920, not 2020. It was published in 1920, and it's also a really good book. He talks a lot about how religion is necessary to be successful, and his and your religious belief is very necessary. And he's talking about it in an economic way. Like he's an economist. He's an economist, and he does a really good job of explaining why people are successful, and why. You can have countries that have enormous amounts of natural resources, and they're still super poor. And it really comes back down to honoring God. The next topic. Oh yes. Older General Conference talks. So why do I do these? If you look around YouTube, I think I'm like one of the few people. So you can find some. I know that there's one channel that does the Journal of Discourses, and they use AI to record the Journal of Discourses, and you can tell they do a pretty good job. AI does a pretty decent job of recording, but there's pronunciation that's always weird, and it's always off, and it just throws me off, and it's kind of odd. And I ran across a YouTube channel that has a recording of the lectures on faith, but again, you can tell it's done with AI because the pronunciation of some of the names and the proper names and the places are just really weird. It's just really odd pronunciation. And so maybe one day I'll get to the lectures on faith. Maybe not. I don't know. But I do know that I use the older General Conference talks because and the reason I bring it, well, I'm getting kind of mixed up now because I didn't write anything down other than what to talk about. I use them because I think it's important to learn from history. I think it's important that we learn and understand the historical things in this world. And if we look at only the new stuff, we miss out on so much wonderful things. We miss out on so much incredible things. Now, if you don't have time to do any study, then you really should just focus on the new General Conference talks. I actually put a quote out on my community section of the YouTube channel. There's a communities tab at the top, communities on the right, and I have a quote there or something in that tab every day, and it should show up every morning. For me, it's 8 o'clock. That's because that's the time zone I'm in. So if you're in Utah, it'll show up at 7 o'clock, and if you're in the Pacific time, it'll show up at 6 o'clock. If you're in the East Coast time, it would then show up at 10 o'clock. 9 o'clock. I apologize, 9 o'clock. But something shows up there every day at that time. And so I have a lot of those quotes from these older General Conference talks and I got a comment on one where, and I'm not even going to look it up. I'm not even going to look what it said. But basically it was, this is outdated. What does the current prophet say? And I get it, right? Like, we want to follow the prophet. We want to follow the current prophet. But if you're going to ignore the history of everything else, then you're missing out on so much. You're missing out on so much goodness. And I think it's really sad. And if you listen to General Conference, you'll hear that there are people and things that are still quoted in General Conference. I try to read and learn from things that are quoted in General Conference, not just from the conferences themselves, but things that are quoted in conference. And there's a lot of stuff that is quoted in General Conference. A lot of Journal of Discourses is still quoted in General Conference. A lot of these older General Conference talks is still quoted in General Conference. Matter of fact, in October of 2023, Elder Bednar gave a wonderful talk where he referenced a talk given by J. Reuben Clark, and J. Reuben Clark's talk was called "They of the Last Wagon," and that's kind of that was kind of my theme for me and my daughter when I went with her on her high adventure to the Boundary Waters canoe area up in Minnesota, and that was our theme was we of the last canoe. That if it doesn't matter if it takes us all day, we're going to get there and we're going to do it. And so my daughter and I paddled around the Boundary Waters with the rest of the youth, and surprisingly, we weren't the last ones. we did pretty good, but I went in expecting to be last in everything and to be they of the last canoe, and so I was prepared for that. But the point is that they of the last canoe, or they of the last wagon. Sorry, I got caught up in my own thing. They of the last wagon. It's about the pioneers that would show up a little bit later than everyone else on the Pioneer Trail. It was about the people who struggle in the church, but they still get their job done. That they still do the calling that's given to them. It's people who have their own life's work to do, but they still are committed to the church. And it's about all the little things that everyone does every day. And I think it's just wonderful. And so anyway, had Elder Bednar not referenced that General Conference talk, then I don't know that I would have read it, and it certainly wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been our little theme for our high adventure this last summer to go out canoeing. And there's just so many wonderful things that you can learn from these older conference talks. I understand the need and the necessity to listen to the prophet, to see what the prophet's currently saying. But there's everything that they're talking about today they've talked about before, which is one of the things that's really interesting, and one of the things that when you dive into, you'll say, oh wow, that's amazing. Matter of fact, I used to think I was pretty... I have since become a constitutionalist since reading all these older General Conference talks. My views on the Constitution and on everything else has just gone straight solid. It's the Constitution. The warnings that they gave us, the impressions that we were given, the just everything that was taught just points to that, as that's what we need to focus on, is our Constitution. And that shouldn't be a political thing. The Constitution is, I mean, yes, it is politics, but it really shouldn't be a political thing that we want to preserve the Constitution and follow the Constitution. It should be the number one goal of every U.S. citizen, because it is not only the founding document, but it was inspired by God. It is an inspired document. So that's why I listen to the older General Conference talks, is because I think that there's just a lot to learn from them, and I've rambled on about random stuff. But that's why. The new General Conference, this latest one, one of my callings, I have a couple of them, but one of them is to teach Elders Quorum. And so every 2 weeks, I'm studying those new General Conferences anyway. I don't necessarily make videos about it. Matter of fact, I don't have time to make a video about everything I study. I read a lot of stuff that I don't make videos about. I study a lot of things I don't make videos about, simply because I just don't have time to do it. And I do watch television a little bit, but not nearly as much as I used to, especially since starting to study some of this older General Conferences. Just super fantastic. And it's really amazing how much I've learned from them. And it's amazing how much I've learned from the newer General Conferences as a result of studying those older General Conferences. The connections I have made and the insights that I've gotten has been just amazing. So as much as I love these new General Conferences, as much as I love, matter of fact, I think the members of the 70 gave some of the best talks this last General Conference. Massimo DeFeo, holy cow, his was awesome. And then I really like Jose. I know his name. It's just not coming to my mind right now. But he actually came down and did the groundbreaking dedication here on the Fort Worth Temple. But his General Conference talk was also really fantastic. I think the 70 did a really wonderful job this last time, and I love their conference talks. So July 24th, I'm going to do an experimental live stream. I've never done a live stream before, and apparently you can invite people to join in on your live stream. So if I do a live stream through the web browser, I can. It's just a live stream, and you guys can type in the comment section, and cool, I can answer questions, whatever. But if I do it through my phone, apparently with the app, you can do a live stream where other people can join. So that sounds really cool and really interesting. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to try it out. We're going to see how it goes. I threw the link out there on the description of that video. It's also in the comment section. It's the pinned comment at the top. So if you want to join and share a story about your pioneer family, maybe, and when I say pioneer family, I don't necessarily mean people that had to come across over the plains. They don't technically need to be in that Mormon pioneer time period from Omaha to Salt Lake City. Maybe you're the pioneer. Maybe you just recently joined the church and are the pioneering member of your family. I would love to hear that story. Maybe one of your parents or grandparents is a pioneer that joined the church, and they're the pioneering member of your family. Basically, I want to hear the story about the pioneer stories about your family, or you joining the church, or any inspirational story in your family. Any inspirational family history would be awesome on Pioneer Day, July 24th at 7 p.m. my time, so it should be 6 o'clock Utah time if that works for you. And if that time doesn't work for you and you're like, dude, I really want to share my story anyway, let me know. Shoot me a line and I'll get with you and we'll do a video. You can tell us all about it. Temple theology. So I've been doing a lot of study on the temple, and this actually started because many years ago, I think this was maybe 3 years ago, I made a post on gab.com in the group called helamansarmy on gab.com. I made a post about the gospel and the fullness of the gospel. Basically, the premise is that Adam and Eve had the fullness of the gospel. We know that they were given the fullness of the gospel in the Garden of Eden, and that or at some point in their life. It depends on who you talk to. And we know that that they had the fullness of the gospel. They knew the gospel, and so if Adam knew the gospel and they passed it down through the patriarchs all the way down through Noah, and if Noah preserved the gospel, then we should see traces of that gospel, of the fullness of the gospel. We should see a remnant in all of the religious history of the world. And that started me down a very large, it started me down this little this rabbit hole that I had no idea that I was getting ready to go down. But what I found is temple theology all over the place, and I found it in different cultures across the world that supposedly did not have contact with each other, different continents, different sections of the world, different nations, kindreds, tongues, people. They all had very similar religious rites. They definitely used different names for things. They definitely looked at things in a different way, but the theology is fundamentally the same. And it's really mind-blowing once you really put it all together. Anyway, I think it's fascinating, and it's given me a very interesting view of the temple. I'm very excited to go to the temple because every time I go in, I see something new that I didn't see before. And there is so much symbolism placed in the Garden of Eden that it's hard to miss all of it. It's hard to catch it all, but and you don't want to miss all of it. But if you think about it, so everything is kind of a temple, right? So if you look at Moses' tabernacle, you've got the courtyard, and then you've got the holy place, and then you've got the Holy of Holies in the middle. And you've got the Garden of Eden. It's planted in a land of Eden. You've got the Garden of Eden, and it's eastward in Eden. And then inside the Garden of Eden, you got the Tree of Life smack dab in the middle. And that is representative of the holy place, the Holy of Holies. This is where God dwells. And there's a lot of symbolism, and there's a whole lot beyond, well beyond just the LDS temple. There's an enormous amount of stuff out there. And it's one of those things that once you start to study it and realize it, you're like, how in the world did Joseph Smith know all this? Well, the truth is he didn't. And there's a lot of, obviously it's not taught throughout all of Christendom, but there's quite a few researchers that really have dove into this. Mary Barker is one of them. I think her name's Mary Barker. Anyway, she dove into it, and she's written a lot of articles about it. It's very interesting. But she's got the perspective of a Methodist, and so when you read some of it, it's clear that it's coming from her perspective as a Methodist and not as the perspective as a Latter-day Saint. So there's things that she is making a supposition where we're like, no, this is really what it is, because that's what we know to be true. So anyway, fascinating. I love temple theology, and it's something that if you really start to dive into it, you'll see symbols and you'll see meaning in almost everything in the temple. It is incredible, and you'll find that the temple is in everything, and everything is in the temple. And it's one of the most eye-opening, enlightening things that you'll see. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about today was, not necessarily politics. I don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about what we should do in response to politics, and that is to pray. Is to pray for our leaders, even the ones you don't like. They need your prayers even more than the ones you do like. Pray for everyone to choose righteously. Pray for the people to choose righteous politicians. I don't want to say leaders, because politicians shouldn't necessarily be leaders. They should be servants. So pray for our people to choose righteous politicians who support righteous legislation that also supports the Constitution, and pray for a restoration of freedom and a restoration of liberty. We have seen a lot of that kind of be eroded away. And again, I don't want to get too political here, but there have been some decisions in the past 20 years that are very obviously unconstitutional, yet we're still stuck with them because we don't have the righteous people to stand up and say, no, this isn't the way the Constitution should be. This is not the will of God. So please pray for our leaders. They all need it more than ever, and we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to select righteous leaders. So that's all I had on my mind today. I don't even know how long this video is. I'm not even looking. So hopefully those of you who stuck it out, besides the 80% that swiped away after the first couple minutes, hopefully you've enjoyed what I've talked about. I hope you really did enjoy the Power of Truth. It does take a couple hours to listen to the full audiobook, but it's completely worth it. The way I do have to say though, the way he portrays tolerance. Tolerance was a much different word back in 1902 than it is today. Tolerance, I think, has been hijacked and not in a good way. It's been taken and twisted, where people expect tolerance but will not return tolerance, and tolerance is a two-way street. So I don't disagree with him in what he's saying, because if you read it through the lens of his time, then yeah, tolerance is the right word. But I think compassion is probably the better word. Be compassionate towards each other. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. I'm going to record another video of an older General Conference talk from October 1945, I believe. George Albert Smith. He actually spoke 3 times in that General Conference, so this will actually be his closing remarks that I'm going to record a video on. So anyway, thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks you for participating. And I would love to have any of you on. If you want to come chat about the gospel, I'd love to have you on. We can do a live stream, or we can just do a video and then I'll just upload it later, whichever one works for you. I'm just happy to have people to talk to about the gospel, and to share their testimonies. And if you don't want to share your testimony, but there's something specific you want to chat about, I would love to do that too. So that would be great. Anyway, so stick around, and you'll see more videos coming out back to the General Conference talks, and then I'll give you a heads up when I start posting another book. If I do, it depends on if you guys are interested. All right. Have a good one. Have a good one. Have a good day. Have a happy day. It'll be a great day. It's always a good day.